Hey, everybody, this is Kate.
And Devin.
Welcome to MedCrimes.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Oh, this was a little slow today.
It's the morning.
It's the morning. Another day, another dollar.
Here we are again. Oh my God. So much has changed since the last time we were here.
Has it?
Well, we published.
Yes, I know. We
did publish. It was our first published week.
That is so true.
How cool.
We are so psyched. Also, so most of our following is in the United States, but I did real quick just want to make sure we made time to point out that we also have people in Germany, the UK, Ireland, Malaysia, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, and
no way,
some Aussies.
Australia.
Yeah.
Down under.
Down under.
What are you guys doing down under?
The reach has been amazing. We have had just a wonderful response, and so far it seems pretty well received, the feedback that we have gotten, which hasn't been a whole lot.
I know, we've gotten a little bit of feedback, but literally, those of you in Australia or like Malaysia,
thank you.
Send us a review.
Yeah, we want to know.
We want to know. I mean, part of it's like makes me afraid to know. Sometimes it's like one of those, I'm not used to reading like, things about yourself.
I know.
But hey, we want to know.
We need to know.
We want to know.
If we want to keep this
we're
going.
able to see the plays every day, like how much we've been played.
Yes.
And I think it's reached my expectations or surpassed my expectations.
Oh, me too.
How about you?
Me too, actually. I did not expect this much of a response so early on, and I do know that podcasts are kind of a long game. You have to be in it for like years before you get enough content to really get a solid following. So we really appreciate you guys who are here in the beginning. The beginning is now.
I mean, and we're only on like what? This is going to be episode 6.
Episode 6.
So it's like you're hearing us in our our early days.
The good old days is now. Don't you ever wish that someone would tell you that now is the good old days? Well, now is the good old days.
Honestly, people tell me that all the time at the grocery store when they see me with my kids.
Oh, I know.
They're like, you're living the good old days. And I'm like, really? Because I had to fight them to put their shoes on. So
I know. We all have to remind ourselves of this once in a while.
I am constantly trying to do that. But let me tell you, the realm of 2 toddlers.
Girl.
The good old days is now. The good old days is now. We'll just keep saying that.
One day you'll miss it. You'll miss it when it's gone. But
I know.
It's hard in the moment, It's hard.
Just keep reminding yourself that to all the other mamas out there that are raising children. Whether they're 2 toddlers, teenagers, that's frightening.
Yeah.
Just
God, I am
the
so
moms
not ready
that are
that.
the moms that are not they're in the newborn phase, so they're not sleeping at all.
The newborn phase.
All of you.
Phew.
The good old days are now.
Girls, boys.
So I think we should also mention, thanks for hanging in there with, our technology stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if any of you notice a difference, with our sound quality right now, but we're working on it. And I think this week we finally got it. So
I think we're getting better and better, I think, every time. But it's... it's a lot of research and watching YouTube videos about settings and mic settings and the internal computer settings. And so we really appreciate you sticking with us through the good and the bad audio. And we're, again, still really working towards that great audio. And as we get more Patreons, too, we'll be able to upgrade our software, upgrade our hardware, and hopefully get better and better. And
I like that little sneak of advertisement in there.
I'm getting to be a professional at this.
But I can already tell on our end the quality difference.
Oh, such
so
a huge
hopefully
difference.
When you guys are listening too, you can hear it too.
I hope you guys can hear it
I've always been told in my entire life that I'm a mumbler, but
I don't think you are though.
Oh, I've always been told that.
Oh God, no, I don't think you mumble. I think you do great.
You're probably just used to listening to my low
I am.
sound
I'm
quality.
very in tune. I speak your language very, very fluently. I'm very fluent in your language now at this moment.
And I think before we get going, it's my turn this week, guys. I've only had 1 episode so far, so we're about to have my episode. But
I am so excited for this. I love it.
It's gonna be a doozy.
I also apologize for my dog barking in the background right now. If you guys can hear that, I don't know if you can or not.
And what I was about to say, if you hear any stomping or anything, because finally, we have our kids together upstairs while we're doing this. We've always been trying.
Yes.
And it's just there's always somebody out of the 4 of them that's sick and whatever else.
Oh my gosh, it's been a nightmare.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So to David and Brad, who are upstairs right now, being the dads of the year, watching those boys while we just get to be down here and
we
drink
are so
coffee.
lucky to have them. They're amazing.
Cheers to you, dude.
Cheers.
Dudes.
Ready? Clink. See?
Clink. Oh, I heard the clink this time too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, dads, for watching the 4 kiddos up
we
there.
love and appreciate you guys so much.
Yes. All right. So this week, my turn. So we're going to talk about Gypsy Rose and Dee Dee Blanchard.
I am so excited to hear this. I'm hitting the mic already because I'm so excited. If you guys heard that.
So
I've heard there was like a Lifetime movie about this, and I think I saw bits and pieces.
So
Hulu.
there is. So if you guys want to kind of get a more theatrical version of the story, because obviously to make good TV, you got to like dramatize it a little bit. But there's a mini series on it on Hulu called The Act. You can also see Investigation Discovery did an episode on Gypsy Rose and her mom Dee Dee.
Maybe that's what I saw.
And there's also so that one was the real life, like here's the people, and then Hulu had the dramatization. And then there's also a documentary called Mommy Dear and Dearest. So this one's been in the news a lot. This is also, I think, the most recent case that we've discussed.
Yes,
because all of this really happened. I mean, she was born in 1991.
Right.
So it really kind of goes from 91 to 2015, 2018.
Wow. So
this is really more recent time. So I think this is our most recent case.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of get into it, and we'll kind of explain how it's related to MedCrimes a little bit, because it is more of it's not one of the traditional ones that we've done where they're a medical employee. But
it's there's absolutely a medical side, and there's a big diagnosis behind all this that we're going to get into.
1000%. And I'm going to we're going to talk about it. So Dee Dee Blanchard. Okay, so she was born as Claudine Petrie in Chack Bay, Louisiana in 1967.
67, okay.
1967, she was born. She was one of 5 children to Claude Anthony Petrie Sr. and Emma Louise Gisclair.
Aha.
I apologize if I have mispronounced any of those.
It's all good, girl. So
Dee Dee's relatives kind of briefly describe her life, that she had a bad habit of stealing from her family.
Dee Dee did?
Dee Dee.
Ooh.
Dee Dee, yeah. So that throughout her life, she was not the most attractive, which tends to kind of go along with some of our cases that we've discussed.
Yeah, the low self-esteem.
And so things that she used to compensate, her stealing was more speculated as to be a form of retaliation when things didn't go her way. And at some point in her early adult life, she did work as a nurse's aide. So it kind of gave her a little bit of that medical background.
Sure thing.
However, that was quite early on when she was a young adult. And she did then later, after her daughter was born, she spent about 6 months in jail for writing bad checks.
Ooh.
So, she had a lot of stealing, lies, manipulation way on in early adulthood.
The bad check thing is like this is going to work for me in the short run, but like no regard for what's going on behind the scenes and what's going to happen down the road.
So there was some expressed suspicion from her family also. So Dee Dee's mother died in 1997. And so Dee Dee was about 30 years old. And there's some suspicion that Dee Dee may have played a role in killing her mother by denying her food. Now, there's never been any charge or anything. There's just several claims that Dee Dee was just like her mother as far as manipulation. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That Dee Dee's kind of sprung in this mentality, and it's also kind of the reason why they think in essence Dee Dee has developed this mental illness that just kind of created this whole story.
Okay.
Now, Dee Dee's mom did have illnesses, and so when Dee Dee was acting as her caretaker, that's just where some of the suspicions came. Like, were you denying her food? Were you denying her meds? Things going on. But nothing's really proven. It's just kind of like that's what the family thinks.
Gotcha.
So when Dee Dee was 24, she became pregnant by her then boyfriend, Rod Blanchard. He was only 17.
Oh.
So that's just kind of striking there too. Maybe somebody who doesn't have high self-esteem.
Yes.
Doesn't, do they go with someone younger because maybe they aspire like, oh, I've got this older woman.
Right.
Who knows?
Builds himself up a little bit,
They had their daughter, Gypsy Rose, who was born on July 27th, 1991. And unfortunately, they separated just prior to Gypsy's birth.
Gypsy Rose.
I really do like that name.
It's actually
Gypsy
a very
Rose.
fancy name.
I know.
Gypsy.
Yeah. So Gypsy was described at her birth as a healthy newborn. Okay. Soon after she was born, though, her mother started to create these medical illnesses and conditions that she claimed that Gypsy had. Oh. She started sending her to doctor's appointments and just wondering, my child's no longer healthy. Like, you need to fix her.
Oh.
So, the basis of this story is known based around the illness that's called Munchausen Syndrome By Proxy.
Ah, here we are.
Anyone heard of that? I do, from the psych days.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
It was always one that really intrigued me.
Yes.
It was always one that was just like, how could you do that? It's also one that's very difficult to diagnose.
Yes,
because it's not based upon visits. Like, you have to see patterns. You have to see patterns, and and
sometimes the damage has been done by the time the diagnosis is made and it's actually figured out. It's
Absolutely.
Very upsetting.
So Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy is. So the definition is that it's a mental health disorder in which a caregiver, most often a mother, routinely makes up fake symptoms or causes real symptoms in a child or adult victim to make it appear that the victim has a true physical or mental health issue.
So either making things up or creating symptoms, as in like injuring them or giving them something that makes them ill.
That's why, especially when you're creating them, that's why it makes it a significant form of abuse.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these actions are typically a result of a maladaptive disorder or excessive attention seeking by the caregiver.
Wow.
In addition to being a disorder, Munchausen syndrome by proxy is also considered a very serious form of child abuse.
Yes.
Munchausen syndrome and Munchausen syndrome by proxy are now classified as factitious disorder imposed on another. So basically, Munchausen syndrome is when you fake or create illnesses within yourself, and then when it's by proxy, it's with another.
I see.
So she's imposing these things upon another person.
So in this case, it would be Munchausen by proxy.
Correct.
Yep.
So the change in the name represents that the belief that this disorder describes a behavioral pattern rather than an underlying psychiatric syndrome. Now, the sad thing is that this disorder is rare. But when you have this disorder, what's alarming is that 6 to 10% of these people with this disorder result in death. These cases get so far. So 10% of these cases.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the victim or the person ends up dying. 6 to 10%.
So it's a very lethal form of abuse.
Yes.
So I'm going to kind of give you the symptoms or the signs to look for in the caregiver, because this one is Munchausen by proxy.
Okay.
So Dee Dee inflicted these upon another, these symptoms upon another. And I want to give you the signs now.
Yep.
And then you tell me throughout the story and the timeline, be like, there's one.
Good call.
There's one.
Good call.
So in the caregiver, so in this case, Dee Dee, it's important to look for the following signs: deception. Caregivers' reports are different from that of the medical personnel.
Oh, okay.
So the person who's reporting these does not match what the doctors or nurses are saying.
I see. Okay.
The caregiver has medical knowledge and may work in a medical setting. The caregiver has desire to be seen as good at what they do, almost like overbearing, overgiving, very good.
They want to be like the hero and like the light in that situation.
They routinely seek approval and attention from medical staff. And refusal of the caregiver to leave victim's side when they are assessed. Because, you don't want to. That's, I think, typical in any type of abuse.
Yes.
You don't want to leave them alone because you don't want them to say something that,
that might point them in the different direction.
The victim's medical history is spotty, vague, or inconsistent. Okay. And lastly, they make recommendations for invasive diagnostic and surgical procedures, and these are accepted without question or concern by the caregiver. So if they were just to all of a sudden say, you need to have this done, their caregiver's like, oh, sure.
Okay.
Instead of being like, well, wait, why?
Well, why?
And what
Let's
are the
talk
risks?
about this. What are the risks?
And,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that is Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy.
Wow.
So now let's talk about Gypsy. Gypsy Rose, Dee Dee's daughter.
Okay.
So, like I said, she was born a healthy newborn, healthy, beautiful baby girl. By the time she was 3 months old, so we're still in that like 12-week postpartum newborn phase, Dee Dee was convinced that she suffered from sleep apnea. This was the first kind of thing. So she had convinced herself that, excuse me, Gypsy had sleep apnea. She began taking her to the hospital, where repeated overnight stays with a sleep monitor and other tests found no sign of the condition. Now, again, this is when you can't just say, oh, I have sleep apnea. They need to watch you. They need to watch you sleep overnight.
They need to do like a sleep study.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dee Dee then subsequently became convinced that Gypsy had a wide range of health issues, which attributed to an unspecified chromosome disorder. And then at some point, Dee Dee had claimed that Gypsy had muscular dystrophy and made her use a walker.
Oh, wow.
So it started at 3 months old.
She made Gypsy use a walker, like on her own, without a diagnosis.
Yep. She all of a sudden said, oh my gosh, you have muscular dystrophy.
Here's a walker.
Here's a walker.
Holy shit.
So that was between 3 months old and 5 to 6 years old.
Wow.
So she just all of a sudden to say, oh, you have this chromosome disorder. This is why you can't do this. This is why, and now you have muscular dystrophy. So you need to use this.
So this poor girl is being raised, being told that she has all these disabilities and all these things she can't do and all these, very scary medical diagnoses. Mm-hmm. Wow. And how old is she at this point?
So at this point, she's about 5 to 6.
She's 5 or 6. She's using a walker. She's got a chromosomal disorder.
And also at this point,
dystrophy.
it's important to know that Dee Dee was a toddler Gypsy was a toddler about 3 to 4 years old when her mom had gone to jail for the bad checks.
Okay.
So Dee Dee was in jail for about 6 months.
Wow.
And Gypsy was under the care of Dee Dee's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And Dee Dee's biggest concern was that Gypsy wasn't going to be taken care of per the doctor's orders. Her specific schedule, her specific needs that she had,
Gotcha.
And there's some belief that that's also why there was the questioning that did Dee Dee take place in her mother's death? Because by the time she was back, her mother soon passed.
Oh.
When Gypsy was about 7 or 8, she was riding with her grandfather's on her grandfather's motorcycle when they had a very minor accident. Nothing major, just kind of slid off, and she got an abrasion to her knee. Mm-hmm. For those that aren't medical people out there listening, abrasion is basically just a minor scrape.
A scrape, yeah.
First little layer of your skin's come off. Let's put a Band-Aid on it, and we're okay. Yeah. So, because of this abrasion, Dee Dee stated that doctors had given her a wheelchair, which Gypsy now needed to use.
Oh my God.
So at about 7 or 8 years old, you got a cut on your knee. You're now into a wheelchair.
What?
It's contributed to your muscular dystrophy progressing. And it was at this point that Gypsy now remained in her wheelchair until after her mother died for years.
Wow.
So the rest of Gypsy's childhood, she's now in a wheelchair.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? What a life for this poor kid.
Mm-hmm. So now that it's believed that she has muscular dystrophy, she's in a wheelchair, and other medical diagnoses going along with it, Gypsy started to be able to go to Special Olympic events.
Oh, okay.
In 2001, so Dee Dee's about 10, however, Dee Dee had claimed that Gypsy was 8. And this is not the first time that we hear about age discrepancies.
So she's lying about her age,
She's lying
too.
about her age.
Wow.
Gypsy was named the honorary queen of a child-oriented parade that was held during Mardi Gras in New Orleans. So they went down to New Orleans to the Special Olympic event, and Gypsy's named honorary queen of this child it's a parade that's in honor of disabled children.
Wow.
Because it's a Special Olympics event.
Okay.
So Gypsy's actually physically 10 at this point, but Gypsy believes she's 8. And we'll get to a little bit more about that later.
My God. This
Gypsy
is really upsetting.
I know. Gypsy stopped going to school somewhere between kindergarten and 2nd grade. So again, around the time.
Stopped completely going to school.
Around the time. So kindergarten's like 6-ish. So again, around 7 or 8 years old, she got put into the wheelchair. So, but somewhere between kindergarten and second grade, Dee Dee decides to homeschool her.
Wow.
And the reason for this was supposedly because her illnesses were so rare. They were so severe. Rare, because they were so severe.
Yeah.
That she's just like, you have to be homeschooled. You need to be with me 24/7. I have to do these things for you.
That's very upsetting.
I think you should probably already have started to see some of these descriptions
yes,
that I described
I am checking
about
them
a
off
caregiver.
in my brain.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when Gypsy was about, again, 10 to 12, and I'm giving these ranges because Dee Dee changed her birth date, right? So again, some of the research, it's like, well, what does Gypsy believe she is versus what is... So I'm giving these ranges because Dee Dee kind of always changed her age, so it was really hard to determine.
And do you think that pulling her out of school was another way to maybe like keep up this facade of like a certain age? Because
probably,
I mean, the school system would have
you're gonna have to keep
acknowledge
going into a grade after grade after grade, and
Exactly.
it's very hard to change how old you are after
Wow.
that. Exactly. But I think probably also because Dee Dee, when you go to school, the parents aren't there.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So
she wanted to be with her all the time.
Who knows what she's going to say, what she's going to
Yes.
do while she's in school.
Yes.
So as Gypsy started to be able to be into an age where she could communicate and have conversations where adults would listen to her,
Right.
it's time to now pull her away from that.
Wow. To just completely isolate her, which is
Mm-hmm.
like an entirely different like form of abuse all on its own.
Yeah.
So sad.
So at this time, they're still in Louisiana. Gypsy's between the age of 10 to 12. So we're looking at between, let's see, right around 2003. Mm-hmm. Most of the time they went to various specialists at Tulane Medical Center down in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Tulane.
And the Children's Hospital of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. They were seeking treatment for all of these different illnesses that Dee Dee claimed Gypsy suffered from. Which now included hearing and vision problems. Gypsy was given these very large glasses.
I remember those pictures. I've
very
seen her
large,
with these big,
thick, very
Coke
like
bottle glasses.
Yeah, very like early 80s
Yes.
type glasses.
Yep.
And again, at this point, we're in early 2000s, so...
And that can, like, if you're wearing glasses that you don't need, isn't that, like, incredibly uncomfortable?
Oh, God. Yeah, make you super dizzy, give you the
Yes.
headaches.
My God,
which
this
probably
poor
induce
girl.
symptoms into even more.
Yeah,
that-
like, oh, you're
Yep.
okay. Now you have a whole brain thing because
Yep.
you're dizzy and have a headache from these glasses.
A muscle biopsy was done, which found no sign of the muscular dystrophy that Dee Dee supposedly insisted that Gypsy had.
Right, because she didn't
Yep.
fucking have it.
And then in some of this, she was also successful in securing treatments for other purported issues that she had also stated. My daughter has these.
Really? So she would just like go to a medical center and be like, oh, my daughter
Yep.
has this diagnosis and she needs this treatment. And they'd be like, okay,
Yep.
that's
So she
fine.
kept saying that over several different months that Gypsy would be having seizures. I think I just called her Gigi. Gypsy would be having seizures.
Combination.
So she's like, oh my gosh, she keeps having seizures. Now she's got a diagnosis of epilepsy. They give her anti-seizure medications.
Oh my gosh.
She also had several surgeries that were performed on her during this time.
Oh,
And
that is so upsetting.
yep, she took her to regular emergency room visits for many minor ailments. Some of the I can't remember if I had typed it up in here, but some of the, if I have, we'll just duplicate it. But she even had given her medication that would induce drooling, things that were, they also had, she has also had her salivary glands removed.
What?
So the doctors removed her salivary glands thinking that she had had too much drooling, but that was really induced by medications.
Oh my gosh.
Gypsy had been told that she was allergic to sugar. And I think at this point, Gypsy had her feeding tube. And so I know we'll mention at some point later on down about her nutrition, but Gypsy was given a feeding tube, which is a surgical procedure.
Yes,
you got to
it
cut her
is.
open to put the tube into your intestinal system.
Gosh.
And Gypsy was fed Pediasure.
Wow.
Through her, so Gypsy now no longer is taking food orally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you imagine this little girl who just thinks she's so profoundly ill and like her her childhood has been taken from her.
Mhm.
I can't believe that it went as far as it did, not only on the part of the mom. I mean, I actually have been, my kids are super fortunate to be fairly healthy and have never really had to have much of a surgical procedure. One time my daughter had a big dental procedure and I just about lost my mind because she had to be sedated for it.
Well,
I was in tears.
My son had to go under general anesthesia at about
That's
a year
right.
old, and I was losing it. I was losing it. And, you know, it was something that was considered elective for a 1-year-old, but it was something that I felt was necessary. However, so here I am wondering, am I doing the right thing putting my 1-year-old under general anesthesia?
Right.
And they take him away to the operating room. My husband went with him till he fell asleep because I couldn't, no way.
Right.
You know, so here we are as moms wondering, oh my God, for your daughter, sedation for this oral procedure, for me, general anesthesia, and I'm freaking out.
And, you know, speaking from the perspective of a provider also, you know, this girl comes in, right. But like this mom wheels her daughter into your care, and this girl is in a wheelchair, has a feeding tube, is emaciated, is generally very unhealthy appearing. Who am I to question that she actually has all of these diagnoses? Because now, I mean, physically and from a clinical standpoint, she's starting to kind of fit the bill.
Right. Because when you look at her,
she looks awful.
Yes.
She looks like she has all of these diagnoses because of what Dee Dee is doing to her.
A lot of the medications are inducing this. A lot of the medications that she's being on, the anti-seizure stuff, whatever it was to induce the drooling, like all these things are helping to show the symptoms.
It's so upsetting.
Yeah. So in 2005, a lot of you will probably remember.
I remember 2005.
It was a long
ass time ago. But
that's when we met.
We met.
Hurricane Katrina.
Oh,
devastated.
That's right. That first year of, I remember now. It's the first year of college.
Hurricane Katrina devastated the Louisiana area.
Wow,
Devastated.
Yeah.
So this is obviously where they lived. Dee Dee was about 14. Not Dee Dee, Gypsy. I apologize for every time I get their names mixed up.
Girl, I do that all the time.
So Gypsy is about 14. But again, her mother keeps changing her age. So Dee Dee claimed that they were victims of the hurricane, which they probably were at some standpoint, whether or not their place was actually in ruins. But so they fled their ruined apartment and went to a shelter that was set up for individuals with special needs. So this is kind of starting to show. So in 2001, they had gone to Special Olympics events and Gypsy was the queen of the parade. And now 2005, they're going to a shelter for people with special needs. So she's starting to receive these handouts.
Wow.
Because of ailments that her child has. Things that are very deserved for people who have these conditions.
100%. It's amazing that these resources are there, but my God.
But for somebody who doesn't have these, it's fraud. I mean, it's fraud.
And just blatant abuse of this whole system.
Yep. So Dee Dee kind of used this event to say that medical records, birth certificate had all been destroyed in the flooding from the hurricane. Okay. It was suggested by one of the physicians that had been following Gypsy for years that they relocate back to Missouri.
Okay.
Which is kind of a native area for Dee Dee. So now they're moving to Missouri. No medical records, no birth certificate, almost like a fresh start.
Wow.
Because Hurricane Katrina. And she's just kind of using that as a crutch at this point. It was like a good shift. If some physicians were catching on a little bit,
so
because they've been seeing her over years, it's like, it's time to change course.
Right.
Let's
Seeing
move on to a new location.
Negative muscle biopsies and these, all these tests that don't indicate that she's actually sick.
So they first rented a house when they first got to Missouri. During this first year that they were there, Gypsy was honored by the Olay Foundation, which is an advocate for rights of feeding tube recipients.
Oh, okay.
And Gypsy was the Child of the Year in 2007.
Oh,
so this was the first 2 years of them being there. So again, they're in a rented home. They and now Gypsy gets this award. You're the Child of the Year for feeding tube patient. You're not even supposed to have one.
Wow.
In 2008, Habitat for Humanity, which is a wonderful organization.
Yes, they're amazing.
Built them a small home with a wheelchair ramp and hot tub as part of the larger project on the northern side of Springfield where they were staying, and then they moved to this house. So now this wonderful organization has just basically built them a disability... Like a
this
ADA
handicap
type home,
accessible
type
house.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then of course Habitat for Humanity is such a big organization that they got a lot of media attention.
Oh, yeah.
Single mother who life was destroyed by Katrina
and
in the wake of all this devastation.
Basking in this
her and her disabled daughter are now given this home, this beautiful pink looking house with a wheelchair ramp and everything that they might need.
Wow.
They were also given a car. They were given a car that would fit Gypsy's wheelchair.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like this feel good story of like, let's do all of these things to help these people who just lost everything.
And let's just reiterate, too, that Gypsy is not at fault here in this stage here.
She's a minor. She's a minor.
Minor who is under the impression from her mom and all of these providers that she has all of these medical ailments.
Correct.
And she is just being abused and does not even realize it. She also has been manipulated to think that her mom is advocating for her, caring for her, making sure that she's getting all the best care that she needs, when in reality, she should have just had a normal childhood. Filled with love and running and playing and sports and friends, and she just was robbed of that completely.
Absolutely.
I'm so like
true.
infuriated by this. I cannot wrap my head around any human being that would do this to a child, let alone a mother to their own child.
I know.
It's just so upsetting.
It completely is. It completely is. So, as I started to say, outpouring of support came from many different charitable places. These two had availed themselves on getting stays at the Ronald McDonald House, which is another like charitable place where if you need housing or like overnight place, it's kind of like David's house where we live, essentially just like that. So for any of Gypsy's medical appointments and whatnot, they were able to stay in this comfort. They also received free flights to Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, free trips to Disney World, backstage passes to Miranda Lambert.
What?
Where there's also many different if you were to Google it, there's some pictures out there of Gypsy frequently photographed with her.
Oh,
so maybe that's something that we could post, a picture of Gypsy and Miranda.
I'm going to look for some right now.
That one was set up by the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
No way.
And the Make-A-Wish is for children, obviously, that like have very poor prognosis.
Life-threatening disease. Yes.
And so here they are getting all of these things from the community.
Wow.
And throughout all of this, do you maybe wonder, where did Gypsy's dad go?
Yeah, where the hell is Gypsy's dad? I want to know.
So they separated, but up until she was a certain age, he was actually involved. So when they were still living in Louisiana, he would see his daughter. He continued to make child support payments. I have to just say this amount because good to you, Rod. $1,200 a month. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? But I have friends who say I get $40 a week.
Seriously,
you know what I mean? So it's like
that's not negligible.
No, it's not.
Not even a little bit.
I think that's very fair.
It kind of sounds like it's very fair,
especially I'm sure probably a lot came from Dee Dee. And Gypsy has this ailment, this costs this much, this costs this much. So she's getting all this money from Rod. So he would send gifts and occasionally talk to her on the phone, but that tended to be more in the later years after they moved to Missouri.
I gotcha.
So he did have a relationship with Gypsy up until about 7 or 8 years old. Then, of course, later on, they moved to Missouri. So this made things difficult. He had hoped to get there regularly for a visit, but because of a variety of different reasons, Dee Dee changed her plans so that he couldn't come.
So he was isolating her from her dad.
Yep.
Also.
Yep.
Wow.
So most of his communication with her was through the phone as she became a teen because of those reasons. And then when people would ask Dee Dee, where's her father? Dee Dee would say that, tell the neighbors that he was an abusive drug addict and alcoholic.
Oh, that's nice.
Who never came to terms with his daughter's her daughter's health issues and never sent them any money.
That's real nice.
Wasn't that nice?
But in reality, he was sending them money all the time.
Yep.
And was really hoping to see her, but was just being.
Now, Rod recalls on one of the conversations when he was about to talk to Gypsy on the phone for her 18th birthday, he recalls Dee Dee telling him not to mention her daughter's real age since she thinks she's 14. So here he is about to wish their daughter a happy 18th birthday.
No.
But Dee Dee's saying Gypsy has really no recollection. Her illnesses are becoming so far along that she thinks she's only 14.
You're kidding.
Well,
and
that's
so
because you're brainwashing your kid. So here she is, a legal adult. And if Gypsy really knew what that meant.
Oh my God.
That's why Dee Dee was hiding it. Trying
so
to keep her a minor and under her legal control for as long as she could.
Wow, that is just insane.
Yeah. So, we kind of talked about how she looks a little bit. So many people were very charmed by Gypsy. They just looked at, you saw some pictures
She's adorable.
of her just now. It's like,
this girl is adorable.
So she's only 5 feet. She's nearly toothless. She had so many teeth removed because of the decay.
Upsetting.
She had large glasses and a very high childlike voice. So all of these things kind of reinforce the perception that Dee Dee was putting upon her with all these illnesses.
Right.
She often wore wigs or hats to cover her baldness.
I saw a couple pictures of her in wigs.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Dee Dee would regularly shave Gypsy's head to mimic the hairless appearance of a chemotherapy patient.
Wow.
Allegedly telling Gypsy that since her medication for what Gypsy thought was leukemia would eventually cause her hair to fall out, so it was best to just shave it off in advance.
Oh, that's nice.
That's what she would tell her daughter.
You're kidding.
The meds are going to make your hair fall out. It's going to be
just
sad
shave
and
it so
devastating.
it doesn't
We're
look
just
thin.
going to shave it. So she would regularly shave her head.
Oh my God, my heart.
And when they left the house, Dee Dee would take an oxygen tank and feeding tube with them.
Oh my God.
And like I had just previously said, Gypsy was fed the children's liquid nutrition supplement Pediasure well into her 20s.
Wow.
And that was just going into her tube feed. That's really all she was getting.
Oh my God. So upsetting.
So at this point, as Dee Dee's getting a little older, not Dee Dee, see, I did it again. As Gypsy was getting a little older, she started to become harder to control because not only is she becoming a teenager, but she's questioning things.
Well, wasn't she like around 18?
Right, but she thinks she's 14.
Sure.
She thinks
but
she's 14,
in
but
reality,
yes.
she's
Right.
like 8. She's like an adult.
And this is where she's starting to have conversations with other people. She's starting to
yeah.
learn about things that teenagers would. So it's getting a little bit more difficult. I kind of had mentioned before about the saliva glands. So at first they used Botox, then took them out altogether. This was to control drooling. It was later claimed by Gypsy later on in interviews that her mother had induced the drooling by using a topical anesthetic to numb her gums before doctor's visits. So that's how the drooling occurred.
You're kidding.
Mm-hmm. And because of that, they removed her salivary glands.
Oh, wow.
So the lack of salivary glands coupled with side effects of the anti-seizure medication caused Gypsy's teeth to decay to the point that the majority of her front teeth were extracted and replaced by a bridge.
Oh, so
she also had tubes implanted in her ears to control her supposed ear infections, which is another surgery.
Yep.
You got to go under for that. You got to go under for the tube feed.
Wow.
So all of this kind of shows, kind of contributes to what we were saying about people charmed by her when they're nearly toothless, but it's not exactly charming on how all of these things happened.
No.
It's not even charming at all.
No.
So as I said, as Gypsy got older, everything is getting questioned. So this is at the point where it wasn't just medical abuse. Now we're seeing physical abuse.
Oh, yeah.
So throughout as Gypsy's developing, she's like, I remember walking. I remember having the ability to walk.
Interesting.
And there might be times when they were alone in their house that she would just stand up and she'd walk.
Oh.
And so it was like, why
can't I walk?
Why can't I walk?
I'm
She's
physically
starting to
walking.
question these things. There was times that she would just take bites of food.
Oh.
Her mother told her she was allergic to sugar. Well, I'm going to just take a sip of soda. Oh, nothing's happened to me. And maybe it must be because I haven't taken a large amount.
Yes, queen.
So this is where her mind is starting to be like,
to question things
what
and
what is
wait
my
a
mom
minute.
telling me? What's going on?
Yes.
So this is all going on inside her head internally.
Yes.
What Gypsy is starting to realize that she knows about her body versus what she's being told by her mother.
Right.
So
good for her for picking this out.
Yes. So this is where physical abuse started to happen to control Gypsy. she would hold her daughter's hand when she's in presence of others. If she started to say things that maybe she shouldn't say, or like things that sounded beyond her mental capability, she would squeeze her hand.
Really?
Squeeze her a little tighter and just be like,
Oh, wow.
and then when the two of them were alone, she would also often strike her with a coat hanger or her open hand.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, God, this lady.
So you kind of asked earlier, like on the provider end.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like, what's up with these doctors? Why aren't they catching on?
Yes.
What's going on? Bernardo Flasterstein.
I love that name. Yes, Bernardo.
He's a pediatric neurologist. So he saw Gypsy, and he was the one that was becoming suspicious of the muscular dystrophy diagnosis.
Okay. Well, didn't she have a negative muscle biopsy?
Yep.
Like, that's diagnostic.
So
but this was at a different facility.
This
and maybe
is at
he
a
didn't
different
have that.
place.
Gotcha.
He ordered MRIs, blood tests, nothing found any abnormalities. He literally said to Dee Dee, I don't see any reason why she can't walk.
Good. Good for
Yep.
you, buddy.
He on a follow-up visit, he said to Gypsy, I want you to stand and support your own weight.
Mm-hmm.
She did this.
Great.
Flasterstein noted that Dee Dee was not a good historian. After contacting Gypsy's doctors in New Orleans, he learned that Gypsy's original muscle biopsy had come back negative. He was undermining Dee Dee's self-reported diagnosis of the muscular dystrophy, as well as her claim that all of her medical records had been destroyed by flooding, because obviously he had gotten a hold of the original biopsy.
Right. Yes,
He
this guy. I like this guy.
He suspected the possibility of Munchausen Syndrome by proxy. But of course, at this point, Dee Dee's catching on to his suspicions.
Yes.
So she's like, hold the press, stop,
Yeah.
everything. And she's demanding access to his notes so that she knows what he's documenting about Gypsy
Right.
and whatnot. Now, unfortunately, he should have reported this.
Yes, he should.
So according to Flasterstein, in later interviews, the minute you suspect Munchausen syndrome by proxy, it has to be reported. You have to have cases followed up on and whatnot, even if you don't have an official diagnosis.
Sure.
Because like I said in the very beginning, it takes years.
Yeah.
So he did not follow up by reporting Dee Dee to social services. He said he had been told by other doctors to treat the pair with golden gloves and doubted the authorities would believe him anyway. However, in 2009, an anonymous caller told the police about Dee Dee's use of different names and birth dates for herself and her daughter, suggested Gypsy was in better health than claimed.
Who was this?
I don't know.
We don't know?
I wish I knew.
I wonder if it was her dad.
There's speculation, but again,
You don't know.
yeah, they had a relationship with them, but wanted to handle it with the gentle gloves because they wanted to keep the rapport with Dee Dee so that they could learn more.
Yeah.
So they never kind of came
Gotcha.
out. So they did have wellness checks done.
Okay.
They did go into the house and saw that everything was in good shape. And they spoke to Dee Dee. They spoke to Gypsy. Dee Dee had explained to the officers that the reason for the misinformation on birth dates and names was to make it harder for her abusive ex-husband to find her and Gypsy.
Oh my God, this woman.
Now, without talking to Rod, they reported that Gypsy seemed to be genuinely mentally handicapped, and the file was closed.
Oh, wow.
So without talking to this person, who they probably very could have done a full report on and like find out to validate, was he an abusive ex-husband and whatnot, they didn't.
There's a lot of layers.
So the system
of, like,
failed
failure
there
here.
too.
Yeah.
You know, you're now into the child care system.
Yeah. A lot of layers of something more should have been done here, but it just wasn't for one reason or another.
Yep.
But that's what makes this particular problem so tricky and so hard to find, because I feel like this is exactly what happens all the time.
Unfortunately.
You know, look at Gypsy. I would look at her and think that she's a handicapped child. You know?
Yep. Dee Dee did at least forge one copy of Gypsy's birth certificate, moving her birth date to 1995. So this would help bolster claims that she was still a teenager.
Okay.
So at 18 years old, she's 14.
Per her birth certificate.
According to that forged birth certificate.
Gotcha.
Gypsy did state later on that she was even when she was supposedly 15, she still didn't really understand how old she was because she found a copy of her actual birth date and recalls seeing it during one of the hospital visits and becoming very confused, saying, "Mom, what's this? This says 91."
Oh,
Dee Dee says, girl. "Just a misprint. Just a misprint."
Yep.
Starting in 2001, when Gypsy was about 10 years old, her and her mom started to attend science fiction, fantasy conventions. Gypsy loved doing these because she could be in costume and blend in with the crowd.
Aww.
You know, her wheelchair didn't make her stand out.
Aww.
She loved theories of
girl.
like the fantasies of prince and princess and would often dress up in like, those fairy tales. So in an event in 2011, so Gypsy's around 20. Really, she's around 20. Mm-hmm. She made what had been an escape attempt. So she had met a man at one of these conventions. But also through online. There was some online connection with them after meeting at a convention. And so Gypsy tried to make an escape attempt and went to a hotel room with this man. Ooh. However, Dee Dee found her. Dee Dee produced paperwork to this man giving Gypsy's false younger birth date and threatened to inform the police.
That's nice.
Now this man's thinking that he's with a girl who's around 19,
like
15.
15. Okay.
Now Dee Dee's giving them this information like, no, you're with a minor. This is my minor child. And so then he's just like, oh,
of course,
okay,
it's
washing my hands of this. Get out of here.
Like any good man would do. Yeah.
Okay. After this, so this was her first escape attempt. Dee Dee smashed her computer. So Gypsy had gotten a hold of a computer and a hammer and threatened to do the same to her fingers if she ever tried to escape again. Oh, no. She also kept Gypsy ready. Oh my God, I can't even say this.
Oh no.
She also kept Gypsy leashed and handcuffed to her bed for 2 weeks. Dee Dee later told Gypsy that she had filed paperwork with the police claiming that Gypsy was mentally incompetent, leading Gypsy to believe that if she attempted to go to the police for help, they would not believe her.
I am at a loss. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. She kept her leashed and handcuffed
to her bed.
To her bed for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yes.
This is so fucked up.
Probably throughout there too, doing more forms of physical abuse as well. I'm sure.
This is so unbelievably upsetting.
Yep.
Wow.
So that was in 2011. So they went through that whole affair, that whole situation. And now Gypsy has still found, because again, she's like, this is insane. I'm growing up. I'm starting to understand more. More of my mother's stories are not making sense. She's also starting to find, she's starting to get like those sexual feelings that girls get when they're growing up.
A normal human being
and
who wants boys. Who is following her instinctual drive to have a relationship.
Yep. And of course, the only way she has access to this at the moment is through the internet.
Yes.
Because her mother is everywhere. So Gypsy would wake in the middle of the night and go use her I think it was her mother's computer, go use the internet. So while her mother's sleeping, she's sneaking off doing this.
Yes.
She made contact online with a gentleman named Nicholas Godejohn. He was around her age, from Big Bend, Wisconsin. He also had some issues of his own. He had a criminal record for indecent exposure and a history of mental illness. Sometimes this was reported as dissociative identity disorder. It was almost like in the theatrical version of the series, it was almost made it seem like multiple personalities.
Multiple personality disorder. I think the technical term is dissociative identity disorder, right?
Because he kept saying like he had different characters to himself.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is, I think. Yeah.
And then he also had Asperger's.
Oh. Okay.
So they had their online relationship for a couple of years. So Gypsy kind of kept any attempts to do any contact outside. She's just very quiet because at this moment, she at least now has some communication with the outside world.
Right. And she knows that if her mom finds out, that would
and so she knew what happened the first time. So she's like, I'm just keeping this to myself for a while. So this relationship went on for 2 years. In 2014, Aaliyah, love that name. Aaliyah is a neighbor. So she's a neighbor. Okay. She's 23.
Hi, Aaliyah.
So she, of course, she didn't realize really how old Gypsy actually was.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
so in 2014, so Gypsy's 23.
So she's actually 23, but she's like...
She's probably shown that she's now probably 19. You know,
Okay.
You know, I mean, because if she changed the birth date to 95.
Right, so
technically
now
she was running 4 years
19
younger.
then, so technically... Yeah,
But
she's
Gypsy, Dee Dee had produced paperwork and for power of attorney, making her mentally incapable. So even though her fake age is of the legal age.
So now that she's, you know, not able to keep her from adulthood anymore, she's trying to keep that legal control over her by activating her power of attorney.
So Gypsy describes Aaliyah as her best friend. Aaliyah liked to think of herself as a big sister to Gypsy, even though their two are almost identical.
Do we
age.
love Aaliyah? We love Aaliyah, right?
I really actually.
Okay,
like
we love
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah.
Yeah,
we
do love Aaliyah. She's actually really beautiful too.
Ooh, I mean, with a name like Aaliyah. Damn.
So Gypsy, Aaliyah was the only one that Gypsy told about her online relationship.
Oh, okay.
So she was talking to her about Nicholas Godejohn, how they were flirting online, and Gypsy had discussed how she planned to elope with Nicholas, and they've even chosen names for potential children.
No way.
Yep.
Oh, they're in that stage.
They're in
naming
that
the
stage.
babies.
And
Okay.
Aaliyah's concern was that she tried to talk her out of this online relationship because she was worried that Gypsy was too young and possibly being taken advantage of by a sexual predator.
Sure. Okay.
Like, it was general concern for her friend.
Yeah.
She considered that Gypsy's plans were just fantasies and dreams, and nothing like this would ever actually really take place. So despite, like I kind of already had said, despite all of Dee Dee's attempts for her to stay away from the internet, Gypsy was able to just continue this relationship for years.
Mm-hmm.
So the next year, we're getting into 2015, Gypsy arranged and paid for Godejohn to meet her mother in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh.
So she had taken money from a stash that her mom had in the house and paid for Nicholas to come to her. Their plan was for them to first bump into each other at a movie theater. She wanted it to seem very casual. It obviously couldn't be planned because then Dee Dee would be knowing that she did things behind her back.
Yeah.
So she wanted to be very casual, just like a casual bump in at a place that they frequented together. She wanted both of them to be in costume and then strike up a relationship that way. Then for him to be introduced to her mother. Now, after having years of an online relationship with each other, they did, when they meet for the first time, snuck away into the bathroom, and Gypsy lost her virginity.
Ooh, girl.
You know? Hey.
Good for you. Get it.
But it didn't go very well. I don't know how that part in the bathroom went, but the plan for them to be introduced to Dee Dee...
Oh, that didn't go well.
That part didn't go very well.
Okay.
That part didn't go very well.
All right, cool.
Dee Dee thought that he was a predator. Why are you chasing this girl in a wheelchair? Why are you talking to us? Just go away.
Sure.
Like, it was not the meeting that the two of them had hoped it would be.
So Dee Dee just kind of like foiled that. Like,
yeah. So now they're kind of like, okay, this didn't go how we wanted to. We want to be together. What do we got to do?
Yeah. How do we do this?
This is where they started to develop a plan that Dee Dee had to die.
Oh. This is getting juicy.
So, in June of 2015, Godejohn came back to Springfield. He was arriving to their home while Gypsy and Dee Dee were away at a doctor's appointment. After they returned home and Dee Dee went to sleep, he went over. Gypsy allowed him in and allegedly gave him duct tape, gloves, and a knife, with the understanding that he would use it to murder Dee Dee.
I do sympathize for Dee Dee. For Gypsy and her predicament. And I think that, I think murdering someone, maybe there's other things that they could have done. Anyway, I'm going to let you continue.
But again, it's like we're not in her space. She's already tried to escape once without harming her mom.
That's true.
And then she was chained to a bed for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's like,
you're right. So I mean,
in her mental capacity, it's like, how do I get away from this?
Self-defense at this point, right? Kind of like, is she going to chain me up to a bed again? Like, nobody deserves to go through.
I just want freedom.
I don't blame her.
Did she necessarily want her mother dead? No. She wanted freedom. No, and at this point, she didn't know how to do it.
Exactly. Wow.
So while Nicholas was killing her mother,
Ugh.
Gypsy went into the bathroom and covered her ears so she wouldn't have to hear her mother scream.
Oh, wow.
Like, this is not, as we just said, this is not what Gypsy wanted. She didn't want her mother dead. She wanted to be free.
Yes.
So she's in the bathroom, covering her ears, trying to not hear this nightmare that's going on. And Godejohn stabbed Dee Dee 17 times in her back while she was asleep.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
The two of them then went into, after Dee Dee was dead, the two of them went into Gypsy's room and had sex.
Oh.
They took
as one does.
As one does. It's like, I guess they're on the high of murder
my God.
Or something. Gotta get that adrenaline out
yeah.
somehow. They took $4,000 in cash, and they fled to a motel outside of Springfield where they stayed for a few days while they were like figuring out their next move.
Wow.
They mailed the murder weapon, which was a knife. So they mailed the murder weapon back to Nicholas's home in Big Bend, Wisconsin, to avoid being caught with it. Gypsy was like, are they going to search for us before they get on a bus? What are they, again, she didn't have all these details because she had been so sheltered.
Yes.
So they decided to mail it.
Okay.
Several witnesses saw the two of them getting on a Greyhound bus. And they noted that Gypsy was wearing a blonde wig and was walking unassisted.
Oh, she was. She was walking.
Yes.
That was going to be my
people
next
didn't
question.
know that this was Gypsy because Gypsy doesn't walk and she doesn't have a blonde wig.
Yeah.
So at this point, it gets a little, it just gets interesting. So
okay.
Gypsy's sad that her mother's dead, right?
Uh-huh.
Like so she's just like, nobody knows she's there. Nobody knows that she's lying there dead in the house.
Sure.
I want her to have a proper burial. Because again, did she want her mother to die? At the root of it, no. She wanted freedom.
She also probably didn't want to get chained to a bed again and abused.
Correct.
And
so
is
they
realizing
decide
that maybe she's not as sick as her mom has been saying.
Well, she knows that because now she's out walking around in public and eating food.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
She wants her mother found.
Okay.
So she decides to go to Facebook.
Okay.
Again,
girl.
She had been sheltered, right?
She's like, what else can I do?
Gypsy did have some fake Facebook accounts where she had come up with an alias for herself, but there was a Facebook account that her mother had managed that was a combined Facebook account for the two of them. So Gypsy went onto that Facebook account and wrote a status, "That bitch is dead."
Whoa,
and
hold on. She wrote on a combined Facebook account, "That bitch is dead"?
Yes. She went on to what people believed was the only Facebook account that Gypsy had. There was only one person that I know of that knew Gypsy had her own Facebook accounts that were under aliases, which was Aaliyah.
Oh.
But what the community thought was Gypsy's only Facebook page was I think it was called it was either called Dee Dee Gypsy Blanchard or Gypsy Dee Dee Blanchard, like a combination of their names. So she writes one Facebook post, "That bitch is dead." Post it on there. Then she's just kind of like, I don't get it. Nobody, like, these comments that, like, they're just like saying, "Are you confused? What's going on?" Like, the comments aren't like actually making people like, "This is odd. Dee Dee, were you hacked?" Like,
yeah.
You know? So Gypsy decides to take it one step further.
Oh no, girl. This is not a good choice.
Second Facebook post. "I fucking slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet innocent daughter."
What?
Her scream was so fucking loud. LOL.
What? Hold on, I'm shook. What's happening here? Wait, so she's
pretending to be the murderer
like an intruder
that hacked into her mother's account.
Oh my god.
And is now saying, "I killed her. I raped the sweet innocent daughter." The scream was so fucking loud.
I gotta go. I'm fucking dead. That this is how she's doing this. Yep. I cannot believe. Mm-hmm. I understand this girl is so sheltered and she literally probably has no idea what else to do.
Yep. So now it's more on the second Facebook post. It's not like, okay, this is more than a hacking. What is going on? This is just strange and suspicious. There's so much concern growing.
I mean, yeah.
Phone calls to Dee Dee's phone went unanswered. Several of them went to the house. Nobody answered. They knew that they often left on medical trips, but they're like, there's the handicapped accessible car in the driveway, so that's not the case. They tried to see inside the house, but after some of the calls to child services, Dee Dee had put protective film on the windows.
Oh.
So when it was really low light, you couldn't see inside.
See anything.
So finally somebody's like, we got to call 911. Between this post and not no one's answering the door, the car's here, what's going on?
Right, what's happening?
Police arrived. They obtained a search warrant. While they were waiting for the search warrant, the police said that one of the neighbors could go in and climb through a window. He saw that the inside of the house was largely undisturbed, but he also noted that Gypsy's wheelchairs were still present. They had a few different, I think they had 3.
So were they
different
concerned that she
wheelchairs.
was still in the house?
And they were like, wait a minute. All of Gypsy's wheelchairs are still here.
Yeah.
But Gypsy's not here. And Gypsy's not in them.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So then there's like more concern of like a kidnapping.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
yeah.
is these posts really true? Did they take the daughter? Did he do these things that these posts are coming through? So within a few hours they got the warrant. They went into the house. They found Dee Dee's body.
Oh man.
So at this point, widespread panic, right? They find Dee Dee's body. She's dead. Where is Gypsy? Everybody is like, this poor disabled girl, where is she? She's helpless.
Wow.
A GoFundMe account gets set up to pay for Dee Dee's funeral expenses and possibly Gypsy's because they don't know where she is at this point. They all feared the worst. They were like, even if Gypsy has not been harmed, they're like, she's going to be helpless without her mother. With her wheelchair,
she's so sick, she can't do
medications,
anything.
support like the feeding tube and oxygen tanks.
Wow.
So Aaliyah, when she was talking to police because obviously this is a small neighborhood and she's obviously Gypsy's quote unquote big sister.
Yeah.
So she's like, she had a secret boyfriend. They were like, Gypsy told me about this person. I thought it was just a fantasy. So they searched and even if she hadn't told her about the online boyfriend, I would imagine that you would probably look for the IP address.
I mean, I would think so.
That would just be standard. But so of course they go into Dee Dee's account where the post had been made and the IP address was from Big Bend, Wisconsin. So the next day, police go out to the county. I won't even try to pronounce what that county is. Waukesha?
Let's see what it is.
Waukesha County?
Waukesha?
So there they go into the Godejohn's home, and both he and Gypsy were surrendered and taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder.
Wow.
Okay.
Yikes.
Here we go. So initially, everybody's like, they hear that Gypsy's safe, right? They're like, oh my gosh, she's coming back to Springfield. Like, she's okay. Everything's good. But when they're looking at and there's some speculation that they heard that she was arrested, but then they're like, well, that doesn't make sense, you know? So here they are watching everything online on TV, and they're just like waiting to see this stuff, waiting to see what's going on. And the county sheriff just starts by saying things are not always what they appear.
Okay.
And then soon after, the video footage is of Nicholas Godejohn and Gypsy walking into the courtroom. And now everybody's like,
whoa.
What is happening?
Yes.
What? Gypsy? Is that Gypsy? That can't be
Gypsy.
She's in a wheelchair.
Oh, wow. That must have been so shocking for everybody to see in the community. And they've all been like supporting Dee Dee and like rallying behind them.
So obviously there's just like so much disbelief.
Wow.
The neighborhood was shocked. Aaliyah, she was the one, she just said that she cried out of disbelief that hearing that she had never been sick or disabled. This woman that she had a close relationship with, she's just like, I've been fooled.
Yeah.
Her mother recalled how everyone had accepted Dee Dee's claims without asking for proof and wondered if the mother and daughter were laughing at their naivety. They're just like, are they like laughing at our expense and getting all of these things for free and just like, oh, those fools. Like nobody really understood.
Yeah.
And so they're like, Gypsy had to have been a part of this. Like, how could she not have been? She knew she could walk, but she stayed in a wheelchair.
Right.
They're all wondering, how could they have been just so stupid?
Wow.
Habitat for Humanity came forward.
Oh, wow.
And they were just really deeply saddened by the whole situation.
Oh, of course.
Now, at this point, Gypsy had been charged with first-degree murder, along with Nicholas. But things started throughout the investigation and everything. things were disclosed of how Dee Dee treated Gypsy.
Right.
So they're starting to understand everything that unfolded behind that house.
That, like, okay, this was more of maybe an abuse situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was abused for so many years and people didn't even know how old she was.
So things started to shift for her not appearing as the victim of a violent murder. They were rapidly shifting to her being the daughter of a long-term victim of child abuse.
I see.
So while the charge of first-degree murder can carry the death penalty in Missouri or life without parole, the prosecutor announced that he would not seek it for either Gypsy or Godejean because the case, he was calling it extraordinary and unusual.
Well, it is. It's very extraordinary and unusual.
So at this point in time, he's not taking first-degree murder off the table completely, but he's, we're not going to kill you. We're not going to go for the death penalty. Because I feel like maybe that's this is fair. Still coming to light.
This is a hard one because I'm always like, murder is never the answer. Murder and violence is never the answer. But if you're in a situation,
I would agree. This is an extreme situation.
This is an extreme situation, and literally, poor Gypsy just felt like she had no option, and that if she continued down this road with her mom, that nothing would ever change.
So after getting medical records from Louisiana, which supposedly were gone in the flood, they got medical records from there and also from those in Missouri. They did change Gypsy to second-degree murder.
Okay.
More of the self-defense type way.
Yeah.
They note this is something that doesn't happen.
Okay.
When Gypsy was in jail, she gained 14 pounds.
Yes, girl.
She's so
eating food.
Undernourished.
Oh, that's so
that
sad.
During that year that she had spent in prison throughout the whole trial and everything, she gained 14 pounds.
Good
And
for her.
most people lose weight in that situation.
Yeah.
So in July of 2015, Gypsy accepted the plea bargain agreement that was presented. And so she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
Nicholas still got first-degree murder.
Oh, wow.
He still got first-degree murder because he contended that he initiated the murder plot, and both he and Gypsy agreed that he was the one who actually killed
He did. Yeah, he did.
He did not plead guilty. He went to trial because his defense was all about, Gypsy convinced all these things and whatever. So they were trying to. So 4 days of trial. Jurors obviously had the option of finding him guilty or not guilty of 3 murder charges, either involuntary manslaughter, second-degree murder, or first-degree murder. And they found him guilty of first-degree murder after 2 hours of deliberation.
Wow.
February of 2019, so that's only, 2 years ago, almost 3.
Yeah, that's literally recent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was sentenced to life in prison for the murder conviction, which, again, was the only possible sentencing since they declined to seek the death penalty. So he will not be eligible for parole. Life in prison.
Okay.
So he will forever be in jail.
Oh, wow.
Gypsy, because again in 2015 she pleaded guilty. Her sentencing obviously started earlier. So because of that, with her 10 years and then how the whole thing with parole works and the amount of sentencing, she will be eligible for parole in 2024.
2024.
2 years from now.
Wow. Okay.
So seeing some things, it's like some videos and stuff. So obviously there was a lot of media attention around this.
Oh, yeah.
So she's been able to do some media interviews from prison. She was actually on Dr. Phil. And so Dr. Phil was talking about the whole Munchausen stuff.
Yes.
And how that all relayed into this whole story. So she was doing all of that from prison. She says that she's not happy that her mother is dead. No. She never wanted her mother dead. Like I said, she just wanted freedom. She's not happy that her mother is gone, but she is happy that she's able to live her life as a free woman. And walk, and even though she's
be well.
So consider this, even though she's in jail, she considers herself free.
Wow.
Because she's able to eat food.
Yes.
She's walking. She's learning. She's educating herself in prison. And in 2 years, she'll still be, if her parole is granted, she'll be out in prison. She'll be in her 2024. She'll be 33 years old.
Yeah. So she
still has a life ahead of her. She'll have to live it as a convicted felon. So I'm sure that's going to have its barriers there, but
But
considering the
feel
life
like,
that she was living.
Yes.
Now, there's a lot of controversy out there, like, was it a hard enough sentence? But I guess, in the way the court system works, if you accept responsibility, you do get a lesser
bodes
sentencing.
well for you. Exactly.
It does. So, and given the fact of the medical history and how all of that played into it, the second degree murder charge, I guess, I don't know if 10 years is the minimum on a second degree murder charge or what, but so at 33 years old, she could potentially be out of jail. But if she has to do the whole 10 years, it's still 2025.
Wow.
So she'll still be fairly young when she gets out.
She will. She could potentially, have a family.
It'll be interesting to see what she does. I mean, I'll have to kind of stay tuned. I mean, that's not that far away.
It's really not. We'll have to issue an update in the future if anything ever happens.
I hope she somehow becomes an advocate.
I really hope so too, or becomes really active in the child abuse.
Murder's never the answer, but I hope she's somehow able to turn it around and become an advocate for child abuse or what. I'm sure she's going to have a lot of barriers because of she's a convicted felon.
Yeah, she's never going to be able to escape from that.
Nope.
But like you said, she's free in other ways, and free in ways that she never thought she would be.
Right.
Like she can eat, she can walk, she can socialize, she can live her life a little bit, even from behind bars.
Right.
And it's so sad that she lost her entire childhood, and that she lost her mom. And like you said, murder is, not ever the answer. And she probably had a lot more options in the moment. She maybe just wasn't thinking or didn't realize all the options that she had. But, she in that moment when it's like a fight or flight type of thing. Right. And, who knows what would have happened if she stayed within Dee Dee's grasp for more years. I mean, she would be dead. There's no way that level of nutrition is sustainable for much longer. You know what I mean?
And then who knows what more meds she would have been put on.
Exactly.
She would have been more diagnoses would have come about.
The misery of a life with her mom would have, that would have not been a life at all. That would have just been, she suffered for so long, And the fact that she feels free even behind bars says something about just the extreme abuse that she was subjected to.
I'd be interested to know that those that are going to be listening to this, how they feel. I would hope that
yes, please tell us, guys. We want to know.
Would think that it's this, you're kind of on the same mentality as how we're thinking. But again, we know murder's never the answer. But
exactly, it's divisive, and there were other ways we could have gone about this, but again, this girl suffered.
It's an interesting debate to have.
It is. It is. We want to know what you think.
And what do you guys think about the story? Obviously, I'm not going to say that Gypsy did the right thing, but what do you think about what she did?
Yes, we want to know.
Think about the way she had to have her poor childhood. So
this was fascinating. Oh my God, I'm reeling from this. I can't. I don't have a lot of words. This was really, really intense, Devin. Yeah, thank you for doing all that.
There's so many different Munchausen by proxy cases out there, so it's like
this is an interesting case study though on the severity.
Yeah.
And this woman, this Dee Dee, was just so manipulative, so cunning, and so it's scary the amount of thought and effort and will that she put into controlling her daughter's every aspect of her life,
right?
And just really doing everything in her power to make sure that she was suffering.
Yep,
it was very sad.
100%.
All for her own.
100%. And this is also another case too, where in some of the other cases that we've talked about, the administration side of the medical system failed because these people could continue to do what they were doing.
Layer after layer after layer.
This happened on this case too. These doctors failed Gypsy by believing her mother, despite all of these things that the tests were showing were not true, and by not reporting it. And so the system failed her as well there too.
It really did.
Alrighty.
Oh, this is so upsetting. Well,
these cases always bring us down.
It really it's kind of a bummer, Devin. Jesus, thank you. But
I don't know as if you can have a podcast called MedCrimes and it make us feel like we have an upper.
No, this is all going to be just like a huge downer. So
it's probably why we can only record one or two at a time because we need to bring ourselves back up.
We do. We need to have some time to recover. So if you guys want to shout us out on our social media and just let us know what you think. And
Thank you for listening. We're about to embark on week 2.
This is a journey.
On more plays.
Yes.
So it'd be really interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I want to see. Absolutely. absolutely.
Share,
So,
share.
yes, share, please. And follow and review and rate
Please.
on whatever platform you're listening. It's really important because it makes us more discoverable. So the more responses we get, the more shout outs on social media, all that, will make us more accessible to everybody else. So please share us. If you like it, share it. We appreciate it. So you can go ahead and follow us on Instagram at MedCrimes Podcast. You can send us a Twitter. Devin loves that.
For all those listening in the UK, send
us
us a Twitter.
At MedCrimes PC. You can search us on Facebook, MedCrimes Podcast. And if you wish to become a Patreon so that we can shout you out on air and you can get a discount on merch, which I put up a little picture the other day. I didn't know about
this one.
Yes. We got
I know about the merch. I know you know about the merch.
Yeah.
Everybody loves a discount.
I bought the Vital Organs logo tee, which is awesome because it has guts on it, and I love that. I love organs. But if you want to join us, you get a 10 to 20% discount code, which hopefully we'll be sharing very soon. So all the more reason to become a Patreon. And you can visit www.patreon.com/MedCrimesPodcast. So, Devin, this was fascinating. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, of course. So, until next time, bye.